Board meeting of the North Lamar Board of Trustees to order, showing all 7 board members present. It has been posted as required by law. We'll move to item 2, invocation and pledge of allegiance. Invocation by Mr. Red Holmes, followed by the Higgins Elementary students doing the pledge.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you at this time, Lord, just thanking you for this day. Lord, we thank you for all the many blessings you've bestowed upon each and every one of us here, Lord. Lord, we just ask you to come into this meeting tonight with us, Lord, and be with this board, Lord. That every decision we make, Lord, will be pleasing to you and will be the best decision for the district and our students and our faculty, Lord. Lord, we just cannot thank you for everything you've blessed this district with, and we just ask you to continue to bless us. Be with the ones that are fighting this COVID, be with the ones that are quarantined, and just be with all our teachers as they just reach out and go above and beyond for this district and these students, Lord. Watch over them and their families. These things are in Christ Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Alright, we got students from Higgins tonight. Elodie Easton, Kimball Fuller, Saxon Brown, Case Berry, and Tucker Milbury to help us with our help us with the Pledge of Allegiance. You ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, we'll move to item 3, public hearing, North Lamar ISD state compensatory education funding. Dr. Chadwick.
So, how are you? Today is the public hearing for compensatory education program as required by Texas State. What we have to do is let you know how much we received in compensatory funding, and our total is $1,911,079. We are required to spend at least 55% on specific state compensatory education programs, and we have that percent listed and show what we actually spent was 56.74%, or $1,084,511. The breakdown of that we show in percentages. Majority is in salaries, and for state compensatory education, that is for students who are at risk of dropping out of school. So all of these salaries go either to the full-time equivalent for the teacher who is teaching only in a program that addresses at-risk students, or for teachers who spend part of their time and that part of their salary is sectioned out with state compensatory education. So you may have somebody who assists one period in a lab for at-risk students, but the rest of the time they're with regular ed students or all students mixed together. So these salaries, 76.68% of the required amount was $831,600 approximately. We also had tutorials, which normally would be higher than this amount, but if you remember, we did not have tutorials after spring break. So that's when we tend to load up on more tutorials. So just 0.77% at $8,350. The 2 schools that held tutorials were Bailey and North Lamar High School. For contracted services, this might mean someone came in to support, train teachers in something having to do specifically with something dealing with at-risk. So we spent 1.13%, or $12,254 in those contracted services. For travel, very little because very little travel happened at all last year. So it was only $434. For supplies, these supplies could be the supplies that supply a lab for, say, a math lab or a reading lab or something that's specific to a student who is struggling or may have failed a previous year's STAR test. So 11.54% is $124,827. And the last expense that we show is summer school, which we still did have summer school even though we were out. We did online and we did lots of phone calls and sent materials home. 9.84% or $106,716. We had a very small amount that also was coded for other allowable administrative fees as allowed by Texas Education Agency. Do you have any questions on that? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, this agenda item is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to participate?
Any questions?
Okay, at this time, we'll close the public hearing. Move to item 4, public hearing, North Lamar ISD State Financial Accountability Rating. Ms. Darrow?
Yes. I'm here this evening to present the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas, what we commonly refer to as the FIRST report. It is for our district. It is for the 1920 rating, and it is based on 2018-19 data, financial data. So it is about a year old data. I will not belabor how the ratings are assessed. I have veteran board members this year, and I also attached a detailed overview in your board packets. Does anybody have any questions on those, on that overview? Okay, if not, we'll move on. And the next thing that is in your packet is the actual FIRST report itself. As you can see, North Lamar got a superior rating. We got a 90% out of 100 possible points. Again, this year, if you'll look on the second page, it's number 10. It is our debt service coverage ratio. Unfortunately for us, it's an all or nothing point system there, so it's either 10 points or 0 points. And again, that hit us this year, but if you'll recall, at the end of 2019, we closed Fund 599, that debt service fund, and that has a calculation in this thing, and I'm hoping that maybe next year's ratio will deal with that fund being removed from our financial statements, and that will get back to normal, I'm hoping. Does anybody have any questions about our rating? If not, if you'll see the next things that was in your board package are the 6 disclosures that are required with the FIRST report. They range anywhere from where we post the superintendent contract to superintendent and board members, travel reimbursement mainly, and then anything where we have to disclose if we had any business transactions with any of our board members. So again, like I said, this is for 2018-19. Does anybody have any questions on the disclosures? All right, well, that concludes then my public hearing, if no one has any questions from the floor.
Okay, once again, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to participate. Okay, at this time, we'll close the public hearing and move to item 5, employee recognition. Mr. Hilder?
Thank you, sir. Board and Mr. Stewart, I do thank you for giving me this time and opportunity to speak. This is National Bus Safety Week and recognition of our bus drivers and monitors. And I've had 2 people come before y'all today. They do an excellent job day in and day out. The first individual, he hasn't missed a day of driving the bus last year at all. The year before, I believe he only missed 1 day, and that was because of the funeral. And that's Mr. Joe Frank. Mr. Joe, would you come up? Joe also works in our district for Mr. Landis and his son. He does an awesome job. I know him there too. And we really do appreciate everything he does. Mr. Joe, we got a certificate for you, and also we have a fish fry gift certificate. So we want you to go out and enjoy a good meal on us. All right?
Do it.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Smiling behind the mask. Our next individual, she not only came all last year and the year before, but for the last 3 years, she's not missed a day driving the school bus AM and PM for us. That is a rarity among any district. She's very dedicated to her job. She started off as a bus monitor, and then came into loving the kids so much, she decided to drive a regular bus, and then she's in special education also at Stone. And so she took over a special education route, I think 3.5 years ago for us, and that's Miss Shelley Props. She'll be also receiving a fish fry on her. Thank you, board. Appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll move to public testimony. No one signed up in the required time for public testimony, so we'll move to item 7. And if you would, pardon me just a moment. Does this item have to be approved? Because I'm going to pull it, so will it take a motion, or is it just a discussion item? All right, I'm going to pull item B, the update on appeal of the Comptroller's 2020 property value study, and we'll handle that after the rest of the consent agenda. So if you've had the opportunity to look at the consent agenda, we'll need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Made by Red, seconded by Alicia. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Okay. Update on appeal of the Comptroller's 2020 property value study. Mr. Robbie Harbuck with LGBS LLP.
Good evening. I am Robbie Harbuck, and I run the division for Lamar that handles the district's property value studies, appeals, and audits. We did file an appeal for the district this year. Property value studies are released January 31st of each year. We kind of had an indication this year was going to be exciting before COVID ever came out. January 31st, the state released the value studies, but they only released in Excel format. They didn't release any reports. So they did a statewide amended preliminary finding February 5th, and then the reports that they released at that time were incorrect. So they did another statewide amended preliminary finding February 12th. And at that time, we reported the district that it was invalid, in jeopardy of losing funding. So we filed both the category and self-report appeal for the district. And in doing so, we were able to get values reduced by $19.7 million, which will result in gaining back at least $200,000, around $200,000 of the funding y'all are going to be losing. That is an estimate at this time. Things flipped last year. In prior years, the prior year value study would fund the current year. And last year, in the 86 legislative session, HB 3 flipped from prior year funding current to current funding current. So 18 was going to fund 19 and 20 until the session was up and HB 3 passed, and that flipped to where 19 ended up funding 19 and 20. So y'all actually started out with an 18 value as an estimate to get y'all through to January 31st. At that time, February 12th, since they did the re-releases, they flipped to the 19 preliminary value, and then now, August 17th, they have now flipped to the final value. And what that does, when they release that study, that gives us 40 days to review and file appeals. When the values are finally certified to TEA, that gives us a time frame of 3 years to file up to 3 audits for the district on any other value reduction that has occurred. So right now we don't have any pending audits. Everything is current. That appeal has been finalized to TEA. The values are there. TEA is starting to do their settle-up process. It's not complete yet. They've started populating the summaries of finance, but the last I checked, they still had to update EDA and IFA. And let's see if the district even has. I'm not showing. Do y'all have an entitlement for EDA and IFA that y'all know of? I'm not showing, Mr.
That I'm aware of.
I'm not showing it y'all. So they should get y'all's numbers final quicker than some of the other districts, because a lot of the districts are still waiting on those portions of those allotments. But right now what we're doing is, like I said, there's a 3-year time frame that starts when a study is certified to TEA. So the 17 time frame is coming to an end. So We've requested those rolls to review for an audit. If there's value lost there that's going to cause the district to lose money, we'll follow that audit to get it back. And we've also requested the local adjusted rolls for 19, since it's final to TEA now, and it's actually going to be 15 or 16 months old by the time we get that information. So those rolls could have reduced further. If they did, we'll file those audits for the district to get any funding back that could be lost in that situation. And then, other than that, like I said, we have no pending audits. Of course, we're right around the corner from the next value study being released now. And honestly, I know it's a hard situation for most districts, but COVID happened after the assessment date for 2020, so a lot of districts had value increases when property owners probably felt like they shouldn't have, but it probably will be 21 before we see what the COVID has done to the markets. And in most cases, what we're seeing is it's mainly affecting more commercial and smaller commercial than even real estate yet. But it still will take some time for all that to play out to where, but when the 2020 is released, January 31st of 21, we'll review, report to the district, and let y'all know what we will be doing at that time in order to make sure that we can try to get as much money back. If y'all are still in the same situation, hopefully they get valued up to where it's back in the margin of error. But we'll still, even if the category appeal doesn't need to be filed, where we're fighting with the state against their values, we'll still review the local, and if the self-report appeal needs to be filed, we'll still file that. Whatever's causing the district to lose funding, we'll look at it and make sure that we appeal whatever needs to be appealed for the district. Anyone have any questions on?
Questions? Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it.
Y'all do come up with anything, y'all just let me know.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Okay, we'll move to item 8, action and discussion items. 8A, discussion only, attendance and enrollment. Mr. Watson.
I sent a attendance sheet in your board book, but we have one campus that called and changed their number, so I went and gave you an update and left it on your desk there. As of 10/14 last Wednesday, the Higgins campus on actual numbers was down to 304, which was a drop of 2 students from the month before. Everett is at 253, down 1 student. Parker increased to 232.5, an increase of 5.5. Bailey was at 302, adding 4 students from the month before. And Stone is at 558, down 7 students. And the high school is at a 711, and adding 5 students. So overall, the district increased the student enrollment about 3.5. The ADA numbers, which affects our financing, you can see those numbers as far as of 10/14. Overall, the district is up 5.5 students as far as ADA, which is always good. But if you turn over to the back, last time I included, because some of you were interested in the face-to-face, how many students we had face-to-face and how many online. If you look at our percentages, and I don't know if you remember last month, they were a lot higher. The high school probably went down the least. They went from 27% to 26%. The rest of them dropped several percentage points, but overall, last month we had 21% district-wide that was online, and right now we just have 16%. And so a lot of the students started out in online and figured out that it was a little bit different than the spring and decided to come back to campus, and all the principals worked with the parents and students and allowed them to come back, the ones that wanted to come back. And if you look at the next line, it says the total ADA through October 14 is 2191.8 at a 94.84% attendance rate. Now Melissa budgeted 2233.711. Says so the ADA is about 38.91 less than what she budgeted. Now normal times that wouldn't be in panic mode, but you know what happens if you have less students than you budgeted, then you have a deficit budget. But luckily the state is doing what's called a hold harmless, which means that we're going to keep the same attendance as we did last year through the midterm right now. Hopefully they'll extend that. Of course, our normal attendance rate is about 97%. We're down to 94.84. And I don't know if you remember me telling you last year, every 1% that we go down from that 97 equates to right out $250,000 for the district when you start looking at the weighted student, ADA. So the main thing is the attendance, and we know that a lot of that is our online students that are not clocking on. They don't get we don't get counted here, so they get counted as absent. So we are working on those things, and we actually have a meeting with the principals on Monday to work through a lot of those things. So hopefully we'll get that in better shape. Any questions?
Did we have, our students that started on at home at the beginning of the year and they had 6 weeks, then they were allowed to come back. Do we have a problem with them trying to go back and forth?
It's a attendance nightmare if they go back and forth. Now,
Yes.
even though
Yes.
that was in place, not only for our district but statewide, even though we said we was going to hold them to that county period, because they really didn't know, because it's different from last spring, and that's what everybody was basing on. We still allowed them to come back.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some come back as the last week of the 6 weeks. Even.
Yeah.
I know at the elementary I was talking to some of the
Yeah.
principals, and so we allowed them to come back. By now, though, they should be selected where they're at, and then it's going to be from grading period to grading period.
So when you allow them to come back, which is a good thing, then we're not going to let them go back.
The governor said that anytime they want to check out and go online, they can do that. They just can't come back until the grading period.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 8B, discussion only ESL program evaluation.
Good evening. I'm delighted to be up here to talk to you about our ESL program. In front of you, I did make a revision on page 1 and 5, and I had those previously handed out to you. For the 2019-2020 school year, we served we had a total of 115 LEP students, and we served approximately 89 through ESL. If you can see there, I broke it up by grade levels and also by campuses. If you continue down and look at the report, because of COVID, the spring STAR was not administered, so I put there that they were not tested, except there were 2 high school students that tested for the fall EOC, and then you can see their performance on their assessment. On the next page, because of COVID too, we had TELCAS was not administered, and since TELCAS was not administered, or STAR, and because the year was cut short because of the pandemic, there was no students that were reclassified for this school year. I also presented you with the 2019-2020 of approximately how many ESL teachers we have throughout the district, and how, because of last year we had to file a waiver for grades 10, 11, and 12 because there were no ESL certified teachers. Unfortunately, this year we will have to file another waiver, but it's only going to be for grade 12. So we have some high school teachers that have been ESL certified, and hope we can get some more by the end of the school year next year, by August 2021. And currently, for the 2020-2021 school year, we have coded in teens approximately 101 English learners, and as of today, I've tested 15 new ESLs, and so there I have broken it up by campus and whether they're monitored and how many ESL students are at each campus. Are there any questions? I know I went through that rather quickly, but because of the pandemic and the STAR until back, there wasn't really enough to do there.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 8C, discussion only, board member continuing education training hours. we have verified that all board members have completed at least the minimum number of required hours. Is there any discussion or questions? Okay. Move to item 8D, consideration and approval COVID supplement.
Okay, I would like for the district to consider a one-time COVID supplement for all of our staff members. I want our staff to know how much we appreciate the amount of time that they've been pouring into educating our students, not only online, but also in person. Our administration understands that there's an immense level of stress on our teachers right now, and we want them to know how much we appreciate them. So with that being said, I would like to recommend that every contracted employee receive an $800 supplement, and every non-contracted employee receive a $500 supplement, and that's a total of $312,200. And I will tell you that after visiting with Ms. Darrow at the end of the year, June 30th, for our fund balance, we placed $405,219 into the fund balance. So I would like to use that money and give some money to our teachers just to show support for the amount of work that they've had to put in extra, with the extra time that it has taken with all of the COVID restrictions and things. So I just feel like we need to show that support to them.
I'll make a motion to do this.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Red and seconded by Sheila. Is there any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, item 8E, consideration and approval of transportation request. Mr. Hildreth.
Yes, thank you, North Lamar SD Board and Ms. Stewart. Ms. Stewart, Mr. Watson, Ms. Earl, and I have met several times the last month. Let me give you a little history of where we're at with transportation in North Lamar. We currently have about 65 vehicles that we take care of. That's buses, white fleet, maintenance vehicles, garbage vans, trip buses, police cars. And last year, Mr. Earl was able to give us some money to put in those extra vehicles that wasn't there before. So, you know, even though those vehicles like the maintenance and police cars are older vehicles, when we purchase them, we're able to keep them alive, I should say. But we're spending money on them pretty much on a daily basis or a weekly basis here and there. Our bus fleet is pretty old. Cindy, most of you should have all our vehicles. Most districts replace vehicles at a rate depending on what they have. Currently, we have 20 regular routes and 8 sped routes. Since I've been transportation director, we've consolidated 7 routes. So that is 7 buses that we do not have to have on route right now. At one time, North Lamar was up around 32 routes just because of the numbers of mileage that we have to transport kids. We currently have kids that get on the bus about 6 a.m. Some of those kids get off around 5:15 right now. COVID has helped that a little bit because we don't have as big numbers on some of those routes. We have several routes that are pushing 50 kids on a bus, so there's no social distancing. We have kids without masks, and we're dealing with that today and yesterday. And that's another subject, but it's getting kind of bad. If we had the drivers for these routes, we only have 6 current, I would say, sub buses. I don't count our 2 trip buses in that fleet. But those vehicles are very old, been around for many, many years, costing us a lot of money to keep maintaining and fix. This year we had a bus that we sent over to McKinney to have a rebuild. It's not a new motor. It was $17,284 just for that. This bus is, 8 years old, something like that, 6 years old. We had one 2 years ago, same thing. So when you're spending money on buses, it's big items. Last year, COVID kind of helped the transportation department. I went to Ms. Darrow and Ms. Stewart early January, February, and telling them we were going to be in trouble this year because of the amount of money we were spending on our fleet. We did not have it in the budget. So when March came around and we shut down school, it actually helped us. If we didn't have that, I don't know where we would be financially at the end of the year, but it would not be good. This year we are currently in a crisis. There's been a number of buses in a certain age group that have come up with problems. rust in the gas tanks. We've done some research. I talked to our supplier of diesel, and we've discussed it, and he did check their fuel for us. And it has nothing to do with that. It's just, I think that year model of bus is part of the problem. The problem like rust, it gets into the injectors on a diesel motor, and that's $3,000 to replace injectors on a motor. It's like that, and that's us doing the work. We're down to one mechanic, so 65 vehicles. It's kind of hard for him to do all this work, so we've had to outsource that to some local companies and some other things. So we're spending a lot of money this year, and we currently have already replaced, I think, 4 or 5 gas tanks. We have one bus that needs injectors, and we've already replaced 2 buses with injectors. We're going through money pretty quick in our transportation department. Generally speaking, a school district this size, the research I've done was about 2 years ago. I came to the board my first year as transportation director, my second year as transportation director, and I presented about leasing buses because of some financial problem we were in at that time. And I spoke to the board at that time. We needed to try to replace 3 buses a year. Last time we bought buses was in 2017. Those 2 buses are our trip buses, 68, 67, that many of our kids run down the road in. With only 2 trip buses, when volleyball goes out, football goes out, they use 2, and band goes out, that's 4 more. You see where the limit we're in. We don't have enough buses. One time this year, we had every one of our sub buses. We had 3 in the shop. We had 2 in our shop, and we were hurting. We were fixing to call another district to borrow a bus, basically. We don't want to do that, you know. We don't want Paris on the side running down north of our kids, I don't think. I think we want to keep good buses in our district. When I brought that lease to the board, it was just a discussion item, and they didn't see fit for it, and we haven't moved forward with that. We desperately have to get caught up. I'm not saying move forward, we just got to get caught up. If we don't, we're going to be in trouble this year. Band's fixing to start up with their competitions, I believe, first of next month, I think November 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. And they'll be taking 4 buses with them on a Saturday. We have an opportunity to lease some buses. We have Mr. Scott Barnes here. He's from Empire Financial. He and Mr. Mike Ford, which is the salesman for Longhorn Buses, which he's our international dealer, met with Mr. Stewart, Mr. Arnold, Mr. Watson, myself. We discussed all the ins and outs of it. I would have liked 6. We were talking about 3, 4, 5 would be a good number for it. So we're asking for 5 lease purchase buses. When you lease and purchase a bus, you lease these buses, we go through Empire Financial, and they handle the side of that where the financial side. I think Mr. Watson actually spoke to some local banks, and they beat them hands down by quite a big margin. They deal with this. That's their job. They do buses. Royce City is one of them. He can give you a whole list of names, and he's here to answer any questions that you have about the lease purchase and lease. We discussed lease. The only problem with lease is we have to give those back. If there's any damage to a bus, after you own it 3 years, you're going to have damage. I mean, people are going to hit things. We had a coach the other day going down a dark road, and she took off almost the top of the bus. Not that bad, but she broke some things. It just happens, you know. Buses are big. You go down different areas you're not used to, and you're going to have some damage. And we were kind of scared on what that would cost us on the backside. We don't know about that. The lease purchase, I don't think it's been around for eternity, but it has been around for quite a few years. Most people that do the lease purchase are people that are growing very fast, and they can't keep up with buying 10 buses a year, so they go out and do this. So this is a fix where we can kind of come in, get us something this year, and next year possibly do it again, or look at a different avenue, give us a few more buses. But we got to get back on that 3 year. It's been almost 4 years, counting this year, that we purchased buses, and we only purchased 2 at that time. We are in good standings with our SPED department. Mr. Watson was able to find some SPED money for the last 2 years, and we have purchased some SPED buses, and we're going to go back and ask for another little bit of that. So, you know, we're doing pretty good. Those buses are not, we have 1 bus in the shop, but I'm not too worried about it because we have plenty of good spares that's going to keep us safe. But our regular buses are in trouble. We desperately have to do something about it. You know, we will make do like we always have. We'll figure it out. I pray to God a whole lot, and He's answered my prayers every time. I don't know how we do it, but we do it. And COVID has blessed us, believe it or not. I'm not the only one to be positive about that. I promise you. But if it wasn't for that, I don't know what we would have done at the beginning of the school. At about February, we were pushing we had probably 7 routes that were pushing 60, 65 kids on those. These are 77 passenger buses. That's 3 to a seat. Some of you have grown kids that ride these buses that are bigger than I am. Well, I don't fit in one of those seats very well. I mean, my knees are pushing and I take up about 3/4. That's why football takes 2 buses. You know, big boys can't put 2 of them on a bus for 2 hours and expect them to play. So we try to give them a seat of a kid. So, you know, we can't put 77 kids. We can put 50 on there. 40 is a good number. 50 is, we can live with it. But when you're putting 65, your discipline's going up, your issues are going up, problems are going up. Now with COVID and kids are starting to come back, we're starting to see a little influx with that in our problems. You know, our younger kids don't wear masks, so we're starting to have to really worry about that. So this is some issues. The only good thing about our fleet is if we had 7 buses down there brand new, I don't have 7 drivers to put them in. That's another issue that we'll talk about later. But we have to get something in plan right now. And if we don't, the district's going to end up spending money like we already have in a large number. We're pretty low in our transportation budget, and it's been the largest it's been since I've been down there. Mr. Barnes is here, Scott Barnes. If you have any questions about the financial side, he's willing to answer any questions. Mike Horton could not be here. We're looking at stock buses, so that means in December they should be here. Normally we do a purchase style where we go in and click certain things where we want them. If we would have done that, it would have probably been April or May before we would have got them. It wouldn't have done us any good this year. But the stock buses, they come equipped with seat belts, which is required by state law. Since 2017 to have those if they're or 2018 I believe, had those in your system, and this will put those in there. Those 3-point harnesses just like they require. You can opt out of that, but you can't opt out of it on a stock bus. Personally, I would never opt out on it because I don't know the legal problems that could cause later on down the road if there was a wreck and it was state mandated. That hasn't been decided yet. I figure it's coming forth. Anyway, stock buses is what we're looking at. They have some new features. You know, all your new vehicles have all of this collision mitigation where it actually slows the bus down. These vehicles have that. So that's pretty neat. If they go too fast around a corner, it actually slows the bus down. So if you have somebody that hasn't ever driven this bus very often, they can drive it. It's good features I think they need too. So that's kind of what we're asking for. We're asking for a couple other things, but I want to stop right there and let Mr. Barnes answer any questions that you may have about the lease purchase and the financing side.
Okay, you said the stock buses over the custom buses that you usually order. What are we missing that we're not going to be getting off of it? Any safety feature? That's the main concern.
When I checked it out, about the only thing that we're, you know, what we like is some features that would make it easier for the driver. The door switches on the left-hand side. There's armrest for the right side. Just little minimal things. They're going to have AC on them. There'll be Texas code. Everything that we probably want on a bus will be there. You know, in the situation, we have to go with stock buses, and they will be a great benefit to our district.
Are these brand
I was
new?
just saying that, make sure they had air.
Yes.
And these are brand new?
Yes, sir.
I mean, this
Yes,
is the
ma'am.
5/20/22 IC buses. Is that
Yes,
what
ma'am.
we're
It
looking
is.
at?
In the Longhorn bus sales, did everybody receive
Uh-huh.
this?
Yeah, I'm looking
That
at
is
it.
exactly what we'll be receiving. The air's on the back. You know, powered, I mean, it's everything that you want.
But these are brand new,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
this is something.
I totally do not agree with the used buses. Mr. Watson and I did discuss that a little bit. I told him the situation we were in 2 years ago when we got a quote, and then when we went to purchase it, it was not a Texas bus, and I was told numerous times it was a Texas bus, and which was gonna cost us about 10 more grand. And you got a bus that you don't know nothing about, you don't know where it comes from. Usually they come from the upper north section of the states, which means salt, rust,
Yeah.
things
So
like
does
that.
it have warranties on them?
Yes, Steve, we'll have a 2-year warranty. I believe it's on this paper. I wish Mike was here. He is quarantined because of his family, but there is a warranty just like you buy. This is just like if we purchased it with our money. Same thing.
So
No
really-
difference in purchasing our sped buses. I have a sped bus right now, we're having some electrical issues, they're still warranting it, we got it back in April. We didn't drive it, it sat there for all year, we went out to drive it the other day, and it's having some little electrical issues, so it's fixing to go to the shop and get fixed. So it'll still be under warranty, just like we need. At the end, there's two scenarios that we have in this. It's a 3-year and a 5-year plan. The 3-year plan, if you look over on that, I believe it's $171,000, $104 a year is what we'd have to pay for these 5 buses. That would have to be paid every 5 years. And then once we complete that 3 years, they're our buses. We don't owe any more, that's it. I think we owe $1, maybe. $1. I'll be glad to pay the $1. Any more than $1. Then you got the 5-year deal where it's $104,811, the same thing with it. You get a little bit of different interest rate, it's 2/10 there. Like I said, I understand our financial need in this district. I've been here for 17, 18 years, and I know where we are, trust me. But we have to do something with buses. I would like to see the 3-year deal. I don't know if we can afford that. Ms. Stewart, Ms. Darrow, they're more on that end, and they may speak about that, but this is just a temporary fix. We have to go forward and start purchasing buses, or we're going to end up like our facilities. And I hate to say that, but that's where we're going. We're already there, to be honest with you. And it's just going to get worse the longer we wait. We've already waited. This is my 4th year transportation director, and we've already waited 4 years. And we can't wait any longer. If you do, we'll make do and we'll figure it out. But some kids are going to be sitting at school. Some kids are not going to be able to go to competitions because they're going to have to wait on the bus so we can get our other kids home. I'm sorry, I don't put sports before kids get home because that's where that's our bread and butter. That's how we make our money. Mr. Watson just spoke about that. If we can't get them home, they're not going to come the next day. We've got to get them here every day. In our community, buses are key. Ms. Daughtry, I guarantee you she can talk about that because she drove one for many years.
Drove a few.
Yeah, and if we don't have good buses and get them here every day, it becomes an issue.
Do we need a motion on this?
So we want to speak.
More discussion?
I'm saying we're spending quite a bit of money. I mean, that was softening this number up a lot on what we're spending in maintenance already.
We're still going to spend a large amount of money because 5 buses, it won't fix the problem. It's just going to help alleviate some of the concern and some of the issues that we have getting kids to and from activities and to school. What I would do is take 67 and 68, put them on routes, pull our 2 oldest buses. This year, Mr. Joe, he drove bus 34 for I don't know how long, for years here. We pulled him and gave him a newer bus. That motor that he drove, we were just using it local, and we had to use it on a sub bus, and it needs at least $5,000 on that motor. And if we didn't do, and the only reason I got to do that is because we lost the driver, so I had to consolidate a route. So he would have been driving 34 this year. So if we were in that situation, we would have been worse off. So, now I put him on 46. Well, 46 is in McKinney right now. It needs a transmission possibly, which is over 10 grand. We're not sure if that's what it is. We locally changed out the computer just to see if that was it. That's about a 900 part, and it did not fix it. It also has injectors, and it has a fuel tank problem that we haven't fixed. That's $3,000 plus $1,300 for the fuel tank plus the work to do it. So we don't know how much we're going to spend on that, and that's bus 46, and that's one of our older buses. And Mr. Joe loves old buses. He has an old Freightliner right now, and he says, "Don't take me off of it." He just likes old buses. I don't know why. Thank goodness. But we have several buses just like that. 41, 37, 38, 39. All those have been issues for us mechanically. So by getting these 5 buses, no, it's not going to fix the problem, but it's going to help us and keep us safe this year in case something does go down or goes big. Last year it was front ends. We had a lot of front end issues. We're getting into bushings this year. We paid for it to be done once, and that was $800 to put bushings in. Jake was able to fix 2 of them so far. I got out in the shop with him one day, and we got it done. But the part was $174, thank goodness, so we ended up doing it ourselves. We're going to try to do it ourselves. It's just, these things are just happening. We found Two, the bushes wore out, and also cracked the rear end of them. That's common in rear ends. As a truck driver previously in my life, I've had to weld up rear ends and understand that. But, you know, you just get buses that go down our roads over time, they're going to start falling apart and tearing up, and we don't know what it's going to cost us tomorrow. I would like to say if we purchased these 5 buses that we wouldn't have to spend $10,000 more this year, but I can't promise you that. So there's no way I would intend to.
So, pardon me, let's go back a little bit. We keep talking about purchasing and then lease to purchase. And let's talk about exactly what we're talking about in a lease to purchase versus just outright purchasing.
Purchasing it, if you purchase these buses, it costs us $496,415.
Okay.
If we do lease purchase, if you do the 3-year lease, it will cost us $171,104 and some change. If we do the 5-year lease, it'll cost the district $104,000 or $104,811, excuse me, and some change, plus a dollar. So basically, we're from Mr. Barnes here and Empire Financial, we're using their money at a very low rate. I mean, I was shocked. The last time I did this, I think it was $255. So it's dropped quite a bit in 2 years, or a year actually, because I talked about it last year. But
5 years is $28,000. So
right, it's not much money, you know, in the large scheme of things. It is money; it's our district money, but
and this is probably a question for him.
Yes.
Explain why the lease to purchase documents instead of just an outright finance contract that, like you're borrowing money on a vehicle or whatever, you own it from day one. What's the difference and why?
Right. So, if you don't mind, I'll take this. So, I'm Scott Barnes, on behalf of Empire Financial, I want to thank you for the opportunity. And so, you know, I'll give you an example of a case study we did earlier this year with Cuero ISD. So they had an older fleet into the teens, and they've got 5 buses over 5 years, basically $100,000 a year, right? And so they could have bought, they had $100,000 in the budget, they could have bought 1 bus and put it into, you know, pay cash for that. So with 5 buses into the fleet, you know, significantly lowered the average age of their fleet. You know, so we had talked about, you know, the difference. So the lease to purchase is you're basically paying that out over a 5-year, 3 or 5-year full payout. We'd also talked about a residual, which is there's a 30% or 40% respectively holdback, if you will. So it's a balloon payment at the end. So it makes your annual payments lower, but you've got that balloon payment at the end that you would either turn the bus in, pay out that balloon payment, or you could have that refinanced at the time. So a couple of different options. It's just depending on what, you know, as Mr. Hilder talked about, it depends on what fits well into your budget. We could even go out 7 years, right? And that would lower those payments as well, depending on how it fits into and how it coincides with the warranty.
So the 5-year, what is the residual?
On this lease to purchase, the residual is $1. So you own it at the end of that 5 years.
So what you're saying is it allows us to get more buses for a lower amount of money in the interim, which will help. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just have one question for you about that. What's the difference in the lease to purchase versus just the regular lease? Because if in fact we're running this many miles and running into this problem all the time, would it not be easier for us just to lease them when we get new ones at a certain time?
right. So the lease is we turn that bus back in. And I think Mr. Mark was kind of asking this question, why don't we just finance these buses? Well, a lease purchase is us kind of financing the buses, going to a bank, borrowing money, and that's Empire Financial. Once we sign on the dotted line, they're our buses. They're not going back. It's kind of like us financing. The lease, yeah, with a structure in it. The lease is actually where we would give it back. So, you know, if there's that, yeah, you can purchase buses from the lease, and we discussed that. You know, if we were doing 10, I would probably say let's try to do the lease, because if you get a lemon, you can give it back. And you know, you do have that from time to time. But on 5, it seems better for us to do the lease purchase. They're ours. Where I'm a little concerned on the lease is they can't give us a guarantee what this bus is going to be worth, how much it's going to cost us, and what if we did turn it in. If we had to turn it in 5 buses, what? Okay, seats are going to get torn up. They're gonna get scrapes.
How many miles if you go over mileage limit, they charge you?
Like, say 2018, there is a mileage, but I'm not as worried about the mileage because the 67, 68 are had about 55, 52,000 miles on them, and we've had them 4 years. So they said, I think if I remember correctly, it was 12,000 miles. Worst case scenario, I just pull that, put it on a route, a real short route, which we have one that runs about 6 miles, and 2,000 miles a year, then you're fine. That's the only thing about the lease purchase. Lease purchase, we don't have to worry about mileage. They're our buses. As soon as we sign them, they're ours. We can't give them back, they're ours. It's just the way that it's said as a lease purchase. We're actually financing them through them. It's kind of the same way if we would probably go to Guarantee Bond Bank or a local bank and borrow money at a higher rate.
Correct me if I'm wrong or looking at it wrong, but with a $1 residual, it's basically just a fancy way of purchasing the buses.
Just a dollar compensation to finalize the final payment.
The plan that we had, I think, in the spring or possibly last year was it was like on a 5-year deal, it was 77,000, something like that. And then we had a residual of, it was about $150,000 to $60,000 for the same amount of buses. And you can do that, but then you got to come up with that money at the end. This just kind of lays it all out. We did discuss, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Watson, and Mr. Arnold and I discussed, what we could afford and the numbers where we're at. And that's a big decision for y'all. So that's why we kind of went with 5-year, what we did and where we're at with 5 buses. 10 buses is really where we need to be, to be honest with you. That's what I said last year. I think that's what I said 2 years ago. We needed 10 buses 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And now we're just asking for 5. Does that tell you anything? We just need something. I'm begging.
Gotta have it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Darrell, I'd like to hear from her as well.
Yeah.
Can we afford this?
It will make my job more exciting.
Why'd you draw the big bucks for, ma'am? No, seriously. Think we can make it happen?
We definitely need them. And
Oh, I know that.
Well, I will be looking, what our large budget item is. I will be looking for cuts.
So in the past, we've talked about trying to purchase 1 bus a year. This is basically the same equivalent of that on the 5-year plan. We know that we're going to have to get to that point. Because this fleet's got to be replaced.
Right.
So,
We need to be purchasing 3 buses a year, 1 sped, 2 regular every year. And this will get us caught up doing 1 bus basically a year for the last 5 years, because I don't think they've been bought for 5 years, the way I understand it. So this, like I said, this is a Band-Aid on a problem. This is not a solution to the problem. We have included some purchase of some trucks. The transportation department's lost 2 trucks this year. We have another truck that is our maintenance, whatever you want to call it, truck. It has about 160,000 miles on it. We currently use Suburbans and vans to try to pull a 22-foot, I believe, cargo trailer. Van used it a tremendous amount 2 years ago. This year they'll probably be using it again. Last time we did what we had to. We borrowed the ag truck when we could. Sometimes we had to use a Suburban, which was not a good thing. Just them going to Dallas, they would use over a tank full of gas just to get there. So they'd have to take a credit card with them and fill up before they got back. So that tells you how much that's pulling on that vehicle. Our Suburbans are really, really old. We don't want to use a brand new Suburban to pull. We want to keep it good for the teachers and the students, so they're running up down the road, they feel safe. Our vans are in the same situation. They're not designed to pull trailers. I pulled a trailer for 1X one time, and I have a 3/4 ton with a good sized gas bin. You feel it back there. I drove safely at 65 miles an hour, and I wouldn't go any faster in my truck. So when you're pulling it with Suburban or a van, you're talking about moving very slow, and it's dangerous. It's not. It scared me to death every time I went out. I just knew that I was going to get a phone call and say we rear-ended somebody. It's not about pulling; it's about stopping. So we had that. Our football team pulls a little small trailer. That's also the van. Same thing, it's just not, our vehicles are just not designed to pull trailers like that. We do it, but it's not a good thing for them. There's life, you're just taking the life off that vehicle every time, you know. Thank goodness Chevrolet made good vehicles back around 2008 and 2010. That's all I want to say. They made, yeah. They still
got a whole fleet of them.
Good. What's possible? So what my goal is to try to take vehicles that we have and give them out to our staff. So IT got a Suburban last year. Our IT department was using their own vehicles to run all over campus, many miles a day. So we were able to give them a Suburban this year. Diane, a food service, she's using a van, a Suburban also. So we're trying to, after using this vehicle a few years, my goal is to take that to some other department. Maintenance is going to be in this situation. I'm going to be in this situation. So what we would like to do is purchase at least one-ton vehicle and possibly a Cape Ag crew cab dually this year. And the reason I'm saying that is their vehicle is a 2008 Chevrolet. It's had numerous problems, been in the shop several times. We've discussed with Mr. Watson and Mr. Brown about the usage of that vehicle. The K department would have it first, but if it's not being used, we can use it for football games. We can use it for one-act play. We can use it for the band. And that's a vehicle that can pull that 22-foot cargo trailer with no problem and be safe and get to and from like they should. Currently, we went to have the truck, Mr. Lowry over Paris Auto Group. I wanted to get an idea of what it's worth. So if we ran it through an auction or tried to trade it in when we purchased another vehicle, what it'd be, so we could kind of tell you. And the engine light was on. And supposedly, I've not ever smelled it myself. We haven't had any contact with it, but supposedly if you set that vehicle very long, exhaust fumes come in the cabin of the vehicle, so that's not good. If you're at a stock show and you have cows in the back, usually you wait in line about 7 to 8 hours during the night, just waiting to get unloaded. It's normal progression for them when they go to Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston, and other stock shows. So this is something else that we would like to bring to y'all also and tell you where we're at. It's not going to fix the problem, but it would help us in these situations where we have two good vehicles. We do have a 3/4 ton. We kind of talked about that. And like I said, we could use these vehicles for a few years and then rotate them into the maintenance and transportation department and then buy two more. Or we would still use them in the transportation department. You know, if we needed to go get a bus in Texarkana or Dallas, we would jump in these newer vehicles to take that trip. Right now, I'd either have to grab one of our new Suburbans, throw tools in it, or something like that. And we have two of our trucks in our transportation department. They're very, very old. They went down. They're not feasible to fix. We probably have 8 buses down there, maybe 10 that we could sell. I would not suggest selling them currently because of COVID. I don't feel like they would bring very much money. The last time we sold them was when Mr. Martin was here, Charlie Martin, and I believe they ranged about $1,500 a piece. I'm thinking you're going to get about $800 for a bus, you know. So, I mean, you can get a little bit of money out of them, but I would just wait and see where we're at when COVID all ends and possibly sell them. We possibly get about $10,000, maybe 15 out of those. And it could be possibly this year to help offset some of this cost of these vehicles too. But I would not be in a hurry till we kind of see where we are on that. But that's something we're definitely discussing. Mr. Watson, you got anything to add on this?
Did you want to talk about the police vehicle?
Yes, I forgot, thank you. My bus is on my brain, I'm sorry. Our police fleet is fairly old. They came from Chicago, I think, mainly Chicago. When we got those, I don't know much about that. I just know that we got those from Chicago, I think. At the time, you know, we were trying to do what was right for the police department. We started a police department. But those vehicles coming from Chicago has a lot of rust and issues to them. We've spent a lot of money, just little things, brakes, bearings, just things of nature. Mr. Dagenhart's vehicle has an issue with something in the timing chain. We've taken it to 3 different auto shops that haven't charged us yet. looked at it, they say it's a timing belt, which is about $3,400 to repair, but they can't guarantee you that's all it is. It started, it misses, it won't go. We even took it to the transmission shop, trying to figure out what was going on with it. But it's going to lay down pretty soon, and when it does, it's going to be a large bill. Personally, I wouldn't give you $3,500 for his vehicle. It's got the lowest mileage on it. I think it only has 85,000 miles, somewhere around there. But it's just not worth it, you know. Those old Interceptors, they're good for what they were, but, you know, when we send it to an auction, we're not going to get much money for it. You know, it's going to be about the same thing. It's going to probably bring $3,000, just guesstimating. Me seeing what police vehicles brought in the past. So you have a situation where we spend this money on it, and it's going to last us long term. So we're looking at some smaller SUVs around the $15,000 to $20,000 mark. We talked, Mr. Watson has talked to a couple of people, and I've talked to Mr. Lowry, Ferris Auto Group. He has a list of vehicles he has on lot right now. We can be a little bit more specific on that if we need to be. And we can probably work with the price a little bit, but these are low mileage vehicles, 14 to 25,000 miles. You're going to get good use. Something I would buy for my wife, basically. That's what we, the last vehicle we went and bought had 17,000 miles, and it was 2 years old. Still on it, 65,000 miles on it. We drive all the time. So, you know, if we can go out and buy a good used vehicle, maybe we can get some more years out of it. I know they were trying to use that vehicle to go out of town more because it was the lowest mileage, but then it became an issue of how it was running, so now they can't do it. I think Mr. Yours is the highest mileage, isn't it? No, we got one other. One other is pretty high. Mr. Tuttle's been in the shop. He came in with a broken line the other night. He was driving home from the Stone volleyball game or football game, I can't remember. Went to hit his brakes, and the line blew out. We got it in the shop. It needed a caliper, it needed rotors, it needed brakes, all of those things. And it, you know, just cost, you know. And the thing about the Interceptors, they cost extra. We've had to wait on parts and things like that. So it's been over a week, you know. So, but if we could start buying some newer vehicles or new vehicles and then pass those down, I think the district would come out in the long run. That's my goal, is to try to get our district to start doing it. You know, I know we can't go out and buy a bunch of vehicles, but, you know, a couple of years we could look at taking the Impalas and giving those to our police department and then buying some new vehicles. They don't like the Impala anymore, but we could buy a Malibu or a Ford product or any kind of product that comes in. And then I think we would be way ahead because we know what we have. We know that it's dependable. We know it's safe. We changed brakes on one of our Suburbans with 200,000 miles on it. It finally wore its brakes out, and they've never been changed. Why? Because we drive it carefully. We don't overuse it. You know, it's going down the highway most of its life, so the brakes just didn't wear out. That's a good thing. Most people put brakes on vehicles over 60. You know, it's just the way they drive. But our faculty does a good job of driving these vehicles. You know, any questions about purchases of trucks or police cars? Yes, sir.
Why didn't we pick Ford?
We did Chevrolet and Ford. There's two bids there. Ford is through the TIPS program through Region 8 in the state of Texas. When we purchase from TIPS, we do not have to have a competitive bid with it. It's automatic. But we can purchase from Chevrolet. Personally, I would rather buy local because the being able to take it and go get it fixed. Right now, I'm having that issue with our international buses. Our local international guy, they do a good job, but when it's in depth, like the transmission, we're having to take it to McKinney. You know, that just happens with that. There's no way to fix that. We can't fix that. But I think with automobiles, we could. We do have a Ford dealership. I'm not saying anything bad about them, but I have a better relationship.
We have Chevrolet.
Yes, we do. I drive a Dodge, so I don't care. I drive a Dodge, I drive whatever. Personally, vehicles nowadays are built way better than they were 20 or 30 years ago. They last forever. They really do.
And Bo, also, when you buy through TIPS, you get a rebate back, and our check the other day was how much? It was like right at $1,500. So as you buy things through TIPS, they give, because that program is set up to help schools, and so you do get a little bit of money back. And so I know I picked up a check down there when I was down there. I thought it was around $1,500, something like that.
And our buses will be bought through tips.
Okay.
It's Longhorn buses too. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I just want to say a special thanks to Clint, because he works miracles down there. I see what he does down there, and he has stretched things a lot farther than I would have thought they could have stretched. And so, I mean, you see the bus concerns and needs that we have, and like you said, you know, we understand prioritizing your needs over, you know, it's not wants, it's needs. And so I don't think I need to say anything else about the buses. I think that was plenty thorough enough. I would like to say on the vehicles he's talking about buying is a 1 ton, just a single cab, 1 ton to pull those trailers on a regular basis and pull things.
Showed a 4-wheel drive one time.
That's just what they had on in their lot.
Yeah.
Now,
Showed a crew duty with the.
Well, that's the cake truck. The dually?
Yeah.
With the crew cab dually? Yeah, that's the cake truck that he's talking about.
yeah.
But what he's talking about is 2 different trucks. One's just a 1 ton, just to pull the trailers around, especially like during football season, when the football has to pull a trailer and the band has to pull a trailer, we have to have 2 things to pull trailers. And right now, one of them's getting pulled by a Suburban that has 215,000 miles. The other one's getting pulled by a band. And so, you know, we're talking about that one just to pull all the things in the district. The Cape truck is a 2008 model, and it pulled, you know, most of it used in the Cape department. But we can use that also on those nights, like on those Friday nights. We can use that and that other 1 ton to pull both of those trailers safely. And also, like he said, there's some issues with that Cape truck that we have now. That would get them replaced and be safe. And then so both of those would be new trucks. The single cab is right at $30,000, I believe, if you look at your bid. And the dually crew cab is like $49 something. Well, they're going to trade the Cape truck in, so just looking online and maybe I used to be a used car salesman, believe that or not. I used to own a used car dealer, a little bit of everything, but that truck's going to bring pretty good, because the 2008 only has 79,000 miles on it. And so it's probably going to bring somewhere in the 20, right around 20, something like that, maybe a little more. Depends, you know, if you get some people bidding on it. So if you take that off that 49, you're talking about another vehicle that's, you know, right there about 30 grand too, you know. And then the police car is going to be a used vehicle with low mileage on it. And so altogether, those things, after we do our trade-in, it's probably going to be somewhere around 80,000, by my best estimate.
So could the police vehicle be a pickup?
I'll let Officer Bowes.
Would you turn it into a maintenance truck?
Yeah, there's no, we don't, and that's another thing, we don't need a police package. That runs up the cost of the initial cost and as well as maintenance. Yeah. And we need to figure as far away from that as, I think Clint will agree with that.
Yeah, which is like tires, you know, their tires, they have to have, they're a certain size of rim, certain size, so their tires are about $250 bucks a piece, instead of 120, 100, you know, because we get a good rate over here at Roadrunner normally, they usually run $100.
Yeah. The reason we thought a small SUV is just for the cost. You know, we figured we could get one somewhere around 15.
Fuel economy.
Because they're going to be traveling out of town and stuff, you know. That was the factors. I'm looking at that.
A truck had been suggested by them, and you know, that's whatever way we move forward is going to be beneficial to the district, I feel, anyway, you know, at this point, just because of their state of vehicles. They're kind of like, you know, they're in a bad situation.
Yeah. And the main thing is keeping our employees and our kids safe, because, you know, the Cape, they haul kids to shows. Sometimes Co-Bark, when he drives the van, there's some kids that go with him to help him set things up. So you do have some kids that can ride in those vehicles too, that as Clint said, is not the safest thing, pulling those trailers with those Suburbans and vans.
Yeah, the vehicle mileage sheet, you'll see what we purchased for the police vehicles. The year models, I believe they were purchased 3 years ago,
a little over, yes.
A little over 3 years ago.
And so.
We
you
also
know,
looked at the mid-sized SUV for the resource officers because a lot of times they have to take children home. So we wanted them to have a vehicle that they could transport children in.
So, Clint, do you have anything else? Okay. So basically what we're asking you, is to approve the lease purchase of 5 buses as the specs that, Mr. Hildreth had presented to you guys earlier. And then, a 1-ton, just a single cab to help pull things, and then the 1-ton dually crew cab for the K department, and then the used vehicle for, the police department.
My notes have 2 different, single cab duties. One was 7.3 engine and the other 6.2, both gas. Which one do you want?
I would go, we're looking at Ford and Chevrolet. The Chevrolet's a 6.6. We have a quote from,
They're both Fords.
These all Fords in this package.
no, y'all should have a Chevrolet.
We got it.
Do not?
Fords.
That's what I was asking why y'all got Fords.
I was wondering why you kept asking that over and over. I'm sorry.
I don't think we're approving the,
Apologize.
we're
I
not
thought y'all
approving
had that.
the brand or type. We're talking about number of trucks and dollars. So what's the dollars on the vehicle?
They're all the same price for a Chevrolet and Dodge. The Chevrolet dealership is $48,898 right now. And we got some wiggle room.
Mr.
One of them's $1,000 more, that's why I was asking that question.
Do what, sir?
One of them is $1,000
Yes,
more.
sir. And I went with gas on the 1-ton. 2 reasons we don't need the diesel. Now, the diesel, the K department is many miles when they go to Houston, things like that, pulling a bigger trailer. I feel they need that. But what we're pulling with the 20-footer, the 1-ton, the gas motor will be efficient. You put a diesel motor, everybody does, that's about 10 grand per mile back. So we don't need that.
So really what I need to
Gas
know,
motor.
what I need to know, Mr. Watson, is what is the dollars?
Okay, like Clint had the lease purchase, it's like I said.
I understand the buses. I'm talking about the trucks, the 3 vehicles. We're talking
The
3
three
vehicles.
vehicles should run somewhere between 80 and 90, and it's gonna depend whether we get, when we buy that used vehicle, what we can purchase it for.
Okay,
And
so.
how much we get on the trade-in on the,
So we're talking about 3 trucks, right?
3 vehicles.
3
Three
vehicles, 2
vehicles.
trucks
Two
and a
trucks,
police
Okay,
car.
so it's on 2
So-
trucks, because there's
Two
3 in
new-
this package.
two new trucks and a used police vehicle.
Okay, and 105,000 of this is due up front, right? First payment's due up front.
Yes, sir. When we sign the contract, then we will have to come up with that money. Is that correct, Mr. Barnes?
So we're
We
looking.
also do that in arrears, but then you pay for that first year's interest, but we can modify that.
So we're looking at $195,000. But is this what the administration's recommending?
Yes.
So where's the 195,000 coming from? Fund balance? So we just approved how much, 300 and something? So we're talking about taking $500,000 from fund balance, but we put $500,000 in last year.
We put 405,219.
So we thought we were just gonna pay out 312.
Okay, Mrs. Darrell, do you have any anticipation of significant hits to fund balance in the rest of this budget year?
No, sir. Like I said, our APA is down from what our budget is. So we're just gonna need to really watch what we purchase.
Okay. In a perfect world, you'd like to see this come up at budget time where we're budgeting for this $195,000 in the first budget year instead of talking about coming out of fund balance, but you can't ignore the need, so.
I make a motion that we purchase the vehicles.
I'll second.
Is there a motion made by Bo and seconded by Sheila? Is there any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Item 8F, discussion only, accountability rating. Dr. Chadwick?
ratings from last year is exactly what TEA sent out. All districts and campuses at North Lamar and the state of Texas are labeled not rated, declared state of disaster due to no state testing in 2020 as a result of COVID shutdown. So all of this information is basically historical data. Do you have any questions?
Anyone have any questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Okay, on to 8G, discussion only, North Lamar ISD asynchronous plan. Dr. Chadwick?
Okay, so I asked Ms. Stewart if I could present this to y'all. Basically, this asynchronous plan was required by TEA after we chose either synchronous or asynchronous, and we brought that choice to y'all and determined that we would go asynchronous. So we had till October 1st to submit this plan. We submitted it a few days before that. We received back from TEA that it was approved. If it wasn't approved, we would have had to submit something different to still get approved. We would have had to make some changes. So we felt very happy that this was approved first time. Just to give you a little background, I made appointments after creating a draft plan. I made appointments on every campus. I asked each principal to gather a group of teacher leaders and let me sit and talk to them. So 6 different groups. I wanted small groups so that teachers could feel comfortable asking me questions based on the draft plan that I had created, so that I could give them good, solid answers as I knew at that time in August before school started. So to the best of my ability, I got their input and I showed them what the draft plan was. The draft plan was based on the requirements that TEA gave us for this plan and the exemplar plans that they put out to all of the districts for us to utilize as best case scenarios. So using that information, we drafted this plan, and I wanted you to see it because it is required to be posted on our website for parents and for our community. So this is the plan. It's in various sections. The first section, they requested a sample daily full day pre-K 12 through 12th grade schedule. So we have that. The next section they required was a chart of our adapted and or adopted instructional materials. What you're seeing is the format that we had to submit it in, the form of the rubric that TEA designed to score the plan. Now, we could have put it in straight essay form, but we would have had to answer every question, and the graders would have had to search to find the answers. So we chose to put it in their given rubric. That rubric consists of the questions that we were to answer, which are on that left-hand column as you go through, and the explanation for the answer in the large right-hand column. As you go on with the materials that we adopted or adapted, which we didn't change anything, we just took what we already had and showed how we were going to use them for the asynchronous plan. The next section is several pages down under student progress. It's describe or attach a description of how you're tracking student engagement and progress in your asynchronous environment. And then implementation. We had to describe specific supports for educators and families to implement effective remote asynchronous instruction. We did that by providing a sample of the professional learning calendar, which we instituted beginning Wednesday, August 19th, with our 2.5-week teacher training, where we took all of our time, where we would usually through the year have professional development. We stacked that all before the school year started to give teachers as much time as we possibly could before the school year started. And then after you get past that, you'll see also in it a playlist where we loaded different opportunities for teachers to choose the training that they thought was best for them. And Once you get past that playlist, you see the final section, or the final two sections, which is describe your professional development for educators, which was required in the plan, and describe your communication and support for families engaging with asynchronous learning. So that's the final page and back page. Since you've had this, I'm certainly not going to spend your time reading any of this to you, but I just wanted you to know that as we dove into this, trying to complete the requirements of TEA, we did this sight unseen, never having had anything like this happen before, and trying to create the best case scenario for both teachers and students. What we have found is, as we've started, things started out rocky, they got worse, teachers are stressed, parents are stressed. We realize that. We're working hard to alleviate those stressors by meeting with teachers, meeting with principals, do what we can to pull back. So oftentimes there's requirements that we had last year that we have lightened up on, but at the same time we still have to provide an education. So not only to the online learners, but to the students in the classroom. So we are doing the best we can, and as we continue to monitor the situation, because it's fluctuating constantly, not only with those who choose to leave, but those who have to leave because of quarantine. And that's your back and forth motion, the most volatile. Very hard for teachers to manage. We realize that. Google Classroom realizes that also, and they have sent out just in the last day that they are going to make some edits to Google Classroom where teachers are going to be able to sort and find these papers or these assignments that they're struggling to find, because this isn't a North Lamar issue. This is, I'm reaching out to other districts. This is an issue all over the place. So Google Classroom as a whole has sent us just recently that they're going to create some systems to put in place to support teachers a little bit better than they have been. But they've been supporting it as needed, and now all of a sudden the need is different. So they have responded in kind, and we will continue to assess the situation, making sure that we're taking care of our teachers, because they are, along with our students, our greatest priority. If you have any questions about this plan, it's big, but it's exactly what we had to do. It was our requirement. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
But after you talk to groups of teachers and you understand the stresses and the problems that they're having, are we able to deviate from this and try to fix that?
I think that we can make some minor deviations, but this is the plan already approved by TEA, so I don't think that we can jump off of it too much, because the plan was built to be broad enough that we could make some deviations.
Okay, define that word asynchronous for me.
Asynchronous is not like us right now. This would be synchronous because we're live, we're in real time. Asynchronous is not real time. So asynchronous gives students an opportunity to actually do their work at a different time. If students were synchronous, our two options were asynchronous and synchronous. If students were synchronous, they would have to be sitting in front of a computer for the entire time of the school day, because it would have to be real time. That we would have to be projecting and the students would have to be receiving. So there's a couple of problems with that. One of those is our internet connectivity. We don't necessarily have it across our school system. Community, county, we're huge county, rural. Your metropolitan areas have a better opportunity of doing that. And asynchronous gives there's a lag time, but you can still put parameters on that.
So are we allowing our teachers now to record their lessons and then put them out there for their students to see?
Yes, they can.
Okay. Now, if a teacher has 4 preparations, high school teacher, or 3, or 2, they have those 7 class periods to teach, and then they also have 2, 3, or 4 preps for their classes to also get. So that's basically 9, 10, 11 preparations that they have to come up with.
What we're asking them to do is if anyone else teaches the same content, for them to get together and share information, share their prep, and play off of each other, basically, support each other. So we've asked them to do that. If they're singletarian, like they're single sections, nobody else teaches it, we did talk to them about finding ways, if there's any way that they could find to, like you said, record while they're doing their instruction. But we've also tried to, and it's stated in the plan, that they just do the exact same thing, if at all possible, what they're doing in class. So not to make a separate plan for online learners versus
But they
in
have to
class.
put it online. I mean, they have to have time to put it online. So when are they finding the time when they're teaching 7 periods a day to do this?
Yeah, we realize that's one of the biggest stressors is time, and
Yes.
that is heard loud and clear. We've talked to them, we've talked to their teachers, and we know that that is one of the biggest problems with this plan or any plan when you're having to work with both online and in-class learners. The other thing we know is this was a change that was forced on teachers. This was not a change that they opted for, that they asked for, or that we asked for them. This was a change that was forced on them, and change is hard as it is. But change that's forced on you is not only hard, but it's met with resistance, which makes it even more difficult. So we do understand that that's a hard thing for teachers to handle. And we have said that as much. Saying it buys us nothing. Doesn't support them much more than them knowing that we care. So we are trying to find ways to take things off, to lighten load, and certainly let them know that I just got through presenting accountability. I've said it as many times to any of them that'll listen. That is not our greatest concern this year. Our greatest concern is their well-being, the students' well-being, and making sure we're just doing the best we can to educate our students and not focused on a state test. Any other questions? Anything that I can share for you? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8H, consideration and approval resolution of North Lamar ISD Board of Trustees regarding on-campus assessments for remote learners.
One of the most common topics amongst superintendents across the state of Texas right now is remote instruction. My plan originally was to present tonight that we were going to ask all of our students who had selected online learning and were failing. My plan was to bring those students back. However, last week on October 15th, the Commissioner of Education had a Zoom meeting with all of the superintendents in Texas and stated that we were not allowed to target struggling students, and he was discussing with us students that are failing or students that are an attendance issue. So he recommended that students that are struggling academically in their remote setting, that teachers and principals should talk to the families about their options. Well, our teachers and our principals have been talking nonstop to our parents of students who are failing, and it is a problem, and we are aware that it is a problem. And as I believe it was Mr. Watson stated earlier, we do have a principal meeting next week to discuss strategies with our principals to discuss this. The 3 things that the Commissioner requested that we talk to our parents about was the 90% rule in order to obtain credit. He wanted us to discuss the truancy laws with the parents, and he also mentioned that we needed to discuss that if the students who ultimately failed to earn a passing grade for a course could be required to repeat the course. So our report cards came out, and I know that some of the schools are requiring the parents of online learners who are not passing to come up and meet with the teachers so that they can sit down and discuss what the students need to be doing at home. Our students are not failing because of our teachers, because our teachers are working overtime trying to teach our kids in the classroom as well as trying to teach the students that are at home. So we'll be asking our parents to help with this situation to help hold their child accountable to make sure that they're logging on and getting their work done and submitted on time. I gave you a document from Powell, Youngblood, and Taylor that explains the guidance that the commissioner released. That can also be located on the Texas Education Agency website on the attendance and enrollment FAQ that explains how we are not allowed to target those student groups. So, when that came out, I met with Mr. Keith, and we started discussing our students that are in the top 20% of their class at the high school level, and these are your kids that are competing for their class rank. And so with that being said, we drew up a resolution that if a student at North Lamar High School is in the top 20% of his or her class, then that student must complete all tests in person and on campus. And the term test refers to end-of-course exams, midterm exams, end-of-year exams, and any other assessment. Also, remote administered assessment shall continue to be provided for any students that are ordered to quarantine by a federal, state, or local government authority or by a health care provider due to the student's positive test result for COVID-19 or exposure to or close contact with an individual who has tested positive for COVID-19. And on a case-by-case basis and in conjunction with the student's ARD committee, remotely administered assessments may be provided to a student if such is necessary to implement with their student's IEP or Section 504 plan. So, being that we cannot ask our failures to come back at this time like we had originally planned, we feel like this resolution is important to put in place for those students, especially who are competing for their class rank. So tonight, my recommendation is that we accept this plan.
And the high school administration agrees with this and feels good about it, and this is what we need to do. Okay. Can I make a motion to accept that?
There's a motion on the floor by Sheila and seconded by Joel. I'd like to hold off just a second and give me the opportunity to look at this guidance from Powell, Youngblood, and Taylor. If the rest of you hadn't had the opportunity to read that paragraph, take this moment to do so. Okay, like I said, there's a motion on the floor, so at this time I'm going to ask if there's any other discussion. Does anyone have anything?
I mean, I don't withdraw this is a good move, this resolution. I mean, we need this. I do have a question about, with what TEA has come out with. We could have students come back and not have remote learning except for those with a COVID reason and that are quarantined by simply saying we're going to terminate. It's not illegal to terminate remote learning as long as we allow for COVID reasons and quarantining. Is that correct?
That is correct, but as I believe Mr. Watson visited with you earlier this week about the funding that's related with that, our main concern here is we are very unique in our county. There are 4 school districts within Lamar County. If we do away with online learning, then it specifically states that we have to provide a 14-day notice to our parents, and we also have to provide them with information that they can transfer to another district. As we talked about earlier in Mr. Watson's report, also we are already down on our enrollment. We know that we've already lost 40 students to homeschool, which is a huge financial burden for us as a district. If we discontinue remote learning, then we have a chance to lose quite a few students to other districts, and I do not feel that that's what we need to do at this time.
Okay, well, that basically was my question. I mean, if we don't need to do this, although we could if we, but we don't need to do this
at this time. I'm not saying that I would be opposed to looking at it later on.
Yeah.
I will tell you that the commissioner does feel like November may be one of the months that we should be the most concerned about with the rise in cases in COVID right now. You know, I just think at this time, with the amount of students that we have on online learning, which is 382, if we did away with online learning and I had to provide that information to our parents that they could go to another district, it would be a huge financial burden for our district if we lost that many students.
So from the high school, both of y'all back there administrators, y'all are good with this?
I was just surprised with the way this thing read. I mean, you know.
Well, it was very disappointing to me, Ms. Daughtry, when the commissioner came out last week and said that we couldn't force our students to come back if they were failing, because we all would love to have every student sitting in the classroom, because a computer does not replace our teachers. And we would love to have our kids back, but we do have to be realistic and understanding that the pandemic is real, and we have to worry about the safety of our students as well and their health. And if we bring our students back, especially at the high school level, you know, you bring that amount of students back, then you have to start thinking about your social distancing guidelines, and they're running a schedule with 2 lunch periods right now. You know, there's a lot of things that come into play when you start bringing all of your students back that you have to consider.
So, I mean, since the commissioner gave this guidance, other districts are moving forward bringing their failures back. Explain how are they doing that, and what's the risk of doing that?
I can't speak on behalf of any other district, but I will tell you that I did speak with our legal counsel regarding that, and he highly recommended not going against what the Texas Education Agency has recommended to us.
So if you did go against the Texas Education Agency's recommendation, what would be your liability?
Well, they control our funding. You know, and if a parent were to file a complaint, then it could end up in court possibly.
Okay. So, without having said it, the other districts are risking a potential hearing before the commissioner to move forward with that, and we elect not to do that.
I elect not to go against what the Texas Education Agency has recommended. That is correct.
Okay. This resolution specifically deals with the top 20% in the high school. The resolution the other districts have done and that we originally looked at included a lot more. Is there any reason why this board can't pass another resolution at a future board meeting that would address those issues if they desire to do so?
If we chose as a district to do this later on, and we chose to do away with remote learning altogether and only provide it for kids who are quarantined by the health department, then yes, we could do that, as long as we understand as a district that we have to provide a 14-day notice, and we would have to share information with our parents on how they have the right to transfer to another district that offers online learning.
And I know that it's extremely difficult to gauge 382 kids, exactly how many of them may leave and go to another district and then cost us that funding. But what I would like to do is ask administration to try to come up with some data for future meetings, that whether it's calling each one of them or whatever, and give us an idea of exactly how many or what percentage that we would be at high risk of losing, because it's hard to just guess at 382 how many are you going to lose. No one knows that. I mean, we think it would be a significant number, but would it be?
I have reached out to some of the districts that have called students back, and I asked particular campuses, and I won't mention them, but it seems to be that they have a lot less students than we have as far as percentage-wise of students that's online. But right now, the ones that I have reached out to, they're averaging about 11 or 12% of theirs when they tell everybody to come back, that they lose, they don't come back. And I know we personally had a handful of students that our parents reach out and ask that they could transfer into our district as online learners.
And I know Paris has had some reach out. I talked to one of their administrators, and they've had some reach out to them because they're still doing online.
So basically,
But the districts that you spoke to had less than 100 students in their districts
Yes.
that were participating in remote learning by choice.
So they were very small, so.
Can we have-
You know, that sample is not probably an accurate percentage, but
Well-
even at that, we have nearly 400 students, and you're talking about 11, 12%. You're talking about 42, 45 students if the statistics is similar to theirs. And so that times what we get per student amounts to about $260,000, $270,000 that you lose. That's something that in the central office, we was actually talking today about it. It's not something that we want to look at. I mean, if you have that many students leave, we already lost about 40 to homeschool. If you have another 40 or 50 leave, now you're down 100. What you got to understand is that, as Melissa will tell you, when you start losing that many students, you're going to have to reduce your force of teachers, because if you don't have 100-something students, then that's about 5 or 6 teachers you no longer need.
Well,
Even though it's spread out throughout the district.
85% of that 250,000 would have to be coming from employees to balance the budget. Isn't it about 85% payroll?
Well, payroll, it's about 76%.
80%. So, can we continue having those discussions as we move forward so you can bring?
I'm doing that.
I know that Tyler, for example, I think they have close to 20,000 students, have recently decided to bring them all back. So, I mean, much larger district than ours, but we could have some discussions as this happens with other districts. Obviously, haven't spoken to all the board members about this matter, but I can speak for myself and send a message loud and clear to both you guys and the staff that I would like to see all the students return as soon as possible, but I'm not forgetting that there is a pandemic. I'm not forgetting that there is potentially $250,000 a year in funding loss. All of those things factor in, but I do want the teachers to hear it loud and clear that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that we're going to get these kids back and end this online learning as fast as we possibly can. And I think that the rest of the board probably shares that sentiment. But that's the reason I asked, if we pass this resolution, can another one be passed in the future addressing those issues? Because obviously it's fluid and it's changing, and a lot of districts are going forward with bringing back the failures. So there very well could be a shift in opinion coming from the commissioner, especially with politics involved. You know, so I just want to make sure that we're not.
That's how come we're monitoring, because there's going to be several things that we have to really pay close attention to. Just the attendance itself, as long as we're at home harmless, then that attendance doesn't affect us. But that's just through the midterm. If they say the second semester that we're going to start going by your attendance, and we've lost 3% of what we normally have on our attendance, the amount of money we're going to lose from our ADA may offset what we lose. And so we got to keep all that stuff and monitor and make adjustments as we go. And just like you, our administration, and just like the teachers, we want the kids back as quick as we possibly can, but in a safe way and a financial way that won't financially hurt the district.
You know, and I really feel like that as other districts in the county address this, that some of them are going to move forward with bringing the kids back, and that will allow us flexibility in the future, not to worry about the finance side of it. I will say one thing: we're all worried, the administration and board, we're all worried about the health of our teachers and what this is causing them. But I will also say that there's a student on the other end of every one of those. And having had one that's been quarantined and had to go online, experienced delays in emails being answered and stuff like that because of those teachers' workload and their frustration. A kid gets stumped on a subject and waits 24 hours for an email to be answered by a teacher. It's unacceptable for the kids, but it's also unacceptable for the teachers to even be put in this position that they've been put in to start with. But You know, it's that way across the United States and across the world. It's not just at North Lamar. So the motion is on the floor, made by Sheila and seconded by Joel to approve this resolution. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 8. What is that? I. Consideration and approval of SSA agreement. Mr. Watson.
You all got a copy. Each year, we have to have a signed agreement on the shared service agreement with our special education with Kirtland and Chisholm. And it's the same agreement that we've had for several years with the exception of 2 sections. And so I'm just going to go over those 2 sections. The first one is 5.3, on the request by our auditor, who also audits Prairie Land and Chisholm, and in the past had audited us too, have recommended that in the contract that the language be put in and spelled out how we charge for a multi-district student. A multi-district student is students that go to like Prairie Land and Chisholm. They're actually their students, but they come on our campus in our ECC classes. Okay, and so there's a fee that's charged. And in the past, not everybody was clear about how that fee came about. And so the auditor asked us to put it in the contract, and it basically states that the way that we figure for multi-district students is that we take our overall budget for the fiscal agent, which is North Lamar, and we divide by the number of students we have, and whatever that comes out, that's the average number that we spend per student. And that's what we charge Chisholm and Prairie Land to send their students up here. And so that's all that section stated. But that was on the request of our auditor. And then the second one is 9.5. When I first got here last year, I think I explained to you, we started looking at how the transportation was paid for in that co-op, and nobody really had an answer. Nobody really knew. And so it was not in the contract. It did not spell it out how we did it. And it took me over 2 weeks through discovery and asking questions and going back and finding it before we realized how it was paid for. And basically how it's paid for is we file the mileage on the foundation school program through the special education buses that however many miles they put on that year, there's a formula. And so there's a set fund that comes to the fiscal agent. And so once we get that, we look at our cost. And so in that contract now, it states that the way that we do pay for education, transportation in the special education co-op is through that foundation school program. And we've got it put in the language in there now too, that if the amount we get is not enough to cover the cost, then the other districts will pay extra. In the past, since nobody had it written down, and we were paying for a lot of costs we probably should not have been paying for because nobody knew how it was getting paid. At least the most recent one didn't know. And so, anyway, we just got it in the language of how we pay for the transportation. And so if you look at 9.5, and I'll let you read that, it kind of spells out how it's all paid for and what it pays for. But other than that, the contract's the same thing we've paid, that we've had for years. And so at this point, we just need you guys to approve the agreement, and then Jeff, afterwards, you'll need to sign one of those copies and leave it with Kelly. Any questions on that? You also had a sheet that, like this right here, that was attached with that. Okay. All that is a breakdown of our co-op, and it shows the percentages of the FTEs. At this point, this year, our percentage went down 1. We're 62%, and then Chisholm and Prairie Land are nearly split exactly. It's 19%, 19%. And then it shows you how much each school district pays in their budget for the co-op. And so I just wanted y'all to be aware of that, so that you have that knowledge.
I'm sorry to spring this question on you. Probably one I should have sent you before the meeting or whatever,
okay.
But so you would be prepared. But having looked at this for years, being on the board almost 6 years now, this comes up every year. But tell me why a shared service agreement is what's best for North Lamar in terms of money and in terms of our kids.
Okay. And when I got here, I did analysis on that last year, Jeff, so I can answer that question pretty confident. Whenever you do a shared service, there's a lot of times you have stuff like a special ed director. You've got to have a special ed director. Well, if we just was on our own, we would still be paying for our sped director. But instead of paying 62% of that salary, we'd be paying 100% of that salary. And same thing for your physical therapy, your occupational therapy, and all of those people. And so instead of us paying 100% of each one of those salaries, we pay a percentage, the other two school districts pay a percentage. And then when you start looking at the number of students that we have, because we have the majority of the students, that's how come we got 62%. I looked at if we didn't have this shared arrangement, if we could reduce our staffing. That's what I was looking at. Is what when I first got here, kept saying there was 100 too many staff or whatever. And so I was trying to see where we had too many. And when I was looking at this particular deal, even if we were on our own, we would have to have the exact same staff. We couldn't reduce our staff because the majority of the numbers are ours. And so instead of us paying 62% of it, when I put a pencil to it, if we was on our own, it would cost us nearly $500,000 more than if we were in the shared arrangement. And so when I put a pencil for Prairie Land and Chisholm, they were about right at half of that. It was 200-something thousand each for them more. So it saves all of us money by doing a shared contract like this. And it's just come down to, like I said, each of them deal like a special ed director. They'd have had to pay for their own sped director, so it would have been 100% of them. So it's just saves everybody money by doing this.
Okay. So we know it from you studying it. We know it saves money to have shared
Yes.
services. And the kids, do we feel like that because it is shared services that we actually have better or more services for these kids?
Yes, and the biggest thing that you have is, and especially it probably helps the smaller schools more than it does us, because sometimes, like when I was at Prairie Land as the principal, in my 3 grades, I may not have but one special ed kid that needs to be in ECC and receive those services. Well, if you're in that small school, you just have that one child, and you have just them in that one room. That's a very, secluded group, instead of them being in a group of 7 or 8 kids. And so it benefits the kids greatly. And then, what was you asking?
Well, that was the question, the kids. So these other 2 districts, do their kids all actually come over here? Do we serve some of them there, or all of them there? How does that work?
So only the ones that are the most severe are on our campus. The rest of the time they're on their campus. Now the diagnosticians go there, the occupational therapy, physical therapy, any kind of stuff like that we share go to their campus. And so the majority of their kids are on their own campus.
Okay.
Like you said, in that paper I gave you, it shows Chisholm has 19 shared kids and Prairie Land has 17 right now. So we only have that many from each district that come on our campus, actually.
Okay.
But does the staff go to each district every day, or?
They come
No.
here. Kids come here.
It depends
No,
on
you
what
said
services
some of
they're
them,
getting.
yeah.
Do I?
Some of them, you say they stay on that campus in that other school district.
Kids stay on the campus.
But does that teacher or the social worker?
If they have kids that are on their campus, then they have personnel that's on their payroll that.
Every day.
Every day. And that's your inclusion, special ed teachers. Only the stuff like physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapists, stuff that they just go see them like maybe once a week, or whatever their IEP says, they'll say like so many hours a week, then those specialist people will go to their campuses and perform those. Other questions?
We need a motion to approve this agreement.
I will make that motion.
Made by Sheila, second by Joel. Is there any further discussion?
I just know that we've dealt with that transportation for years, and I'm glad you finally got it taken care
I
of.
am too. That
Thank
way
you.
when I'm gone, the next person knows what's going on.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, item 9, superintendent's report.
Okay, for the superintendent report tonight, I just wanted to kind of give you a brief update on facilities. Mr. Landis and I have been meeting throughout the year discussing different needs that need to be addressed. In a previous board meeting, we had talked about the roof at Everett and how it needed to be replaced, and he received a bid for a 1-inch ISO board over existing roof, and that bid came out to $226,000. The stone A-gym roof is also in need of replacement. The back hallway at Bailey and the cafeteria roof at Bailey is in need of replacement. We need to update our intercom systems throughout the district. We're having trouble with some of our systems, and the intercom systems are so old we're no longer able to purchase parts to fix those systems, and those systems are fairly pricey. We've got playground equipment that needs to be updated. The track needs to be resurfaced. And we have some air conditioning units that need to be replaced, and those are at a cost of about $7,100 each. And we have some work that needs to be done at Parker with the facial boards on the outside of the building that needs to be replaced and repainted. So our district has needs that are beyond the capacity of our district's maintenance and operation budget. And we're going to resume our discussions with our district community advisory committee at this time to discuss a possible bond election in May. We as a district, I feel like, need to focus on our needs and not our wants. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind of our community's needs as a whole due to how, COVID has affected some of our families financially. So I wanted to give you an update on some of the things that Mr. Landis and I have talked about that we truly feel like are needs that need to be addressed now. Does anyone have any questions regarding that? Okay.
Is that everything?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move to item 10, executive session. The board will conduct a closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551, subchapters D and E, Texas Government Code Section 551.074, personnel matters.